Okay. So we continue our discussion on the topic of inner war. So, okay. Great. Let's go back. So yesterday we were discussing about the STHITAPRAJNA section, and we discussed that this could be seen as the characteristics of the person who is a spiritual warrior, and we try to divide the section in that way. And one key point we discussed is how to actually understand that we are in a war. Because if somebody has to even fight a war, the first thing that is required is they need to be aware that they are in a war. So for a spiritual warrior, it's like we could say that they should be strong enough to fight a war. Then what is required? They should be invested enough. I think this is important enough. This is a small territory, why do I need to fight a war? But they need to be aware enough. So if any of these are not there, then a person will not fight the war. Yesterday we focused a lot on a person being aware. And aware means if somebody is aware that they are in a war, the characteristic is no to outer pleasure and yes to inner pleasure. Right. Vajahati yadakama and atmanya evatmana ishtaha. So today we will try to discuss about the speech and the defense. And then in the last session tomorrow we will discuss about the offense. So how a warrior who is fighting, what is their spirit that is always seen through their speech. So let's see what Krishna says about the speech. He describes STHITAPRAJNA'S ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava siddhi kim prabhashita. So ka bhasha, that question was answered in one verse in 55. What is the defining characteristic? Now prabhashita, that question is answered from 56, 57. And the defense, kim asi, that will be answered in 58 to 63. So essentially, before Krishna talks about the speech, he talks about the inner disposition. But if specifically what he wants to do is 57, let's look at this first. We'll go back what is required. So, yaha sarvatra is everything that happens in the world. So, sarvatra na visnemas. So, that in this world, whatever happens, there are snehas, affection. So one is not to attach to the things that happen in this world. No abhisneha. So, abhisneha. And then what is this? Tattaprapya shubhashubham. And in this world, sometimes good will happen, sometimes bad will happen. That is the nature of the world. So, na abhinandati, na dveshti. That when good happens, the person doesn't praise it too much. When bad happens, the person doesn't criticize it or resent it too much. Tasya prajna pratishtita. Such a person is well situated. Read society. यह सर्वत्र न यह सर्वत्रानुभिस्नेह तत्तत्प्राप्य शुभाशुभम् नाभिनन्दति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. Let's recite together 3 times.
तत्तत्प्राप्य शुभाशुभम् नाभिनन्दति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. यः सर्वत्राणामिष्टेः तत्तत्प्राप्य शुभम नाभिनंदन्ति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
So, how does this happen? Remember we discussed this diagram of how initially the world is very big and God, Krishna, the spiritual reality is small. Then eventually what happens? The world becomes small and Krishna becomes big. So in the world, there are always dualities. Kabhi Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Shall I put stand?
Okay, let's see. Third word, we'll use that. Right now, let me see. Hare Krishna. From here to here, I will do something. Is it better now or not? It is. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Is it better? Okay. So there will always it's too loud. There will always be ups and downs in the world. For some people, when the up is there, they go way up. When the down is there, they go way down. And this is what makes them very, let's say, emotionally unstable. If they go to an office, if they go work at a particular place, and one day the boss praises them for their work. So I love this job, this is the best job in the world. And the next day, the job boss gives them feedback. They get a feedback, but they feel like vomiting from the front. So the idea is, oh, this is such a terrible job, I hate this job, why did I ever take this job? Nowadays it becomes even about relationships. Nowadays people have a love-hate kind of relationship. I love you, I can't live without you. That's one thing you see. I hate you, I can't live with you. That is just so unstable. This is the effect of duality. Now, when the world becomes smaller for us, naturally, if the world becomes smaller, then the So just like there is weather in terms of the environment, there is what environmental weather is there.
Similarly, there is our emotional weather. So our emotions, sometimes we feel good, sometimes we feel bad, and there's no need to get too excited about things. It is not, this verse is not saying that we should not feel good, we should not feel anything. That is not what the point is being over. Because naturally, if somebody praises us, we feel happy. If somebody criticizes us, we will feel unhappy. That's just natural. But we don't get too affected by it. Okay, yeah, if somebody praises, it's nice. For a spiritual war. How is it that this kind of not praising or not criticizing? Because any your word is called decoy. What does decoy mean?
Faking.
Faking. Faking, that's true. But faking for what? Yeah.
So deflect.
Yeah, it's faking for creating a diversion, isn't it? Say, it's like, this is the border, and say the enemy attacks from here. When an enemy attacks here now, say the defense forces, the defense force here, defense force here, defense force here, defense force here, defense force here. So when an enemy attacks from here, say this defense force comes here, this defense force comes here, this defense force comes here, this defense force comes here. And all the defense force come to be different. And say this is a small army attacking from here, and there's a big army that attacks from here. And then there's no one to defend over there. So decoy means what? Create a small attack on one side. Basically divert the opposite side in one direction. And once they are caught in that direction, then they are not defending other directions and attack over. So, what decoys are standard strategies. They are not considered cheating, they are just being cunning, being intelligent, being shrewd. So decoys are used to try to deceive the opponents so that they don't know. The enemy is not very sure from where we are going to attack. Or at least, okay, I think that's a bad thing. Sure, enemy is not here. The enemy attacks now somewhere else. And that's how the problems come in terms of a person getting deceived. So for us, if we consider if here there is a 5 crore pressure and we are on a journey, and along this way there is a 5 rupee gain. So if we just go straight, we will get the 5 crores. Now here there is a 5 crore gain, 5 rupee gain. If, let me say there is a 5 rupee note over here. And if we go there, the 5 rupee note comes up to us. Or say here, okay. Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. So now here there is a 5 rupee loss. What does that mean? That say here somebody is coming and they are stealing 5 rupees from our pocket. Now 5 rupees is still a loss. But say if we start chasing that 5 rupees, then what happens is we may get the 5 rupees, but in the process we are losing the time that we could use to get to the 5 crore gain. So this 5 rupee gain and 5 rupee loss, both of these are like diversions, they are decoys. So at the material level, we may get gain, we may get loss. But if we get too caught in it, then we can't focus on spiritual growth. We can't focus on spiritual growth, and that's how we miss the opportunity to go closer to Krishna. We miss the opportunity to actually gain in our spirituality. So that's why it's very important that we focus on which battle is more important and which battle is less important. There are many battles to fight, but say sometimes in cricket there is this thing called sledging. You know sledging? Sledging means the Australian team was very infamous for sledging. That say the wicket keeper, the closing fielders, they tease the batsman, mock the batsman, speak some bad word to the batsman, and then the batsman gets angry, and when the bowler goes, the batsman may hit one, go for a big shot. Maybe the batsman gets 1 sixer, but again the bowler goes, again the batsman tries to go for a big shot, and in that rush of blood, in that of anger, the batsman plays a foolish shot and gets out. So now, okay, the batsman may want to establish one's dominance on the fielding team. That is fair enough. But the dominance can be established just by smashing the bowlers for a sixer, or the dominance can be established by just exhausting the bowlers. In one sense, in cricket, the bowler has to do much more work than the batsman. The bowler has to run all the way down and hit up and bring the ball, and the batsman can just avoid the ball until the ball is outside the line distance. So the batsman could very well exhaust the bowler, isn't it? Or just play the ball defensively, and then once the bowler is exhausted, and the fielder has to stand all over, and then the batsman can attack them also. So there are different strategies. So sometimes what happens is, in winning a small battle, we may end up losing the war. So for us, material gains are like small wins. Material losses are like small losses. But in getting caught in these small wins and small losses, we end up actually losing the big war. Not only losing the big war, we forget even that we are fighting the big war. So, now naturally, say, if you come here for a spiritual retreat here. Now, maybe the accommodation that you are staying over here, for some of you the accommodation may be good, for some of the accommodation may not be so good. Hopefully for everybody it is basically good. But say, if you are staying in a room, you wanted to sleep near the window. And somebody else, like if you go by flight, you wanted the window seat. And you got the middle seat. Now okay, the middle seat will be annoying. Sometimes people from both sides can move, their elbows can hit you. On the window seat you can look at all the scenery. At least, so window seat is better. But okay, you go by flight for 2 hours, 6 hours, and 10 hours, 20 hours. But if you're going by flight, there's some important job interview, whether important assignment, important services there. So if, because we didn't get the window seat, we get so irritated. We quarrel with the other passengers, and then when we get down, we're such a bad mood that we can't do our job. Okay, if you have to see some sights through the window, that is good, but if you can't, it's not that big a deal. So the idea is that we can avoid being affected by ups and downs only when we have some bigger picture. That when Krishna is saying over here that na vinandati na dveshti, don't praise the good, don't resent the bad. So that is because understand that we are fighting a much bigger picture. We are fighting a much bigger war. Say if I'll take cricket is a very common game for us. So let's take suppose say a team needs a 300-400 runs to win, and say a batsman scores a half century. But normally if you score a half century, yeah, you raise your bat and celebrate. But if somebody else scores a half century, start celebrating wildly as if they won the match. Or they score a century, it's a good thing. But if winning the match is still far away, then if the batsman is serious and responsible, you just raise the bat and acknowledge. But after that, there's a lot more work still to be done. Isn't it? So that's not a small achievement, but there is a far bigger thing to be done. I can't afford to get so excited that I forget the bigger thing. So the idea is that material ups and downs, they are small gains or losses, and spiritual growth, spiritual advancement, that is like the big gain. So when we focus on the big gain, either we are fixated on this or we are fixated on that. So we have to choose what we are focused on. So we don't want to be so focused on this, we want to be much more focused on material, on spiritual growth. So in any field, the idea is, yesterday we talked about how we have to become seriously aware that I am fighting a war. But when there is a war, in a war, there may be many battles. Like there is battle 1, battle 2, battle 5, battle 10. So what does that mean? The many battles, say India-Pakistan matches there. Maybe India's star batsman against Pakistan's star bowler. Or there will be in India a very good spin batsman. And they have a very good spin bowler. Those are, they call it lineups or matchups within the match. So, yes, now one batsman will hit their star bowler for very aggressive, just slashing for many sixes, very boundaries. That's good. But that doesn't mean you have automatically won the match. In a war, many battles may be fought. And some battles may be more important than the battles. So it's like the biggest battle in a war. The biggest battle is to keep the biggest battle the biggest battle. The biggest battle is to keep the biggest battle the biggest battle. Otherwise the tendency is to make the small battle very big. Like in the World Cup, it happened that India defeated all other countries, but then in the final, Australia we lost. So now why we lost, we don't know various reasons for that. But the fact is that we won all the other battles. Now, but when the biggest battle came up, either we got overwhelmed or either they were in better form or whatever. You can win all the battles, but you lose the biggest battle, and that's unfortunate, that's heartbreaking. So Australia lost quite a few battles before, they almost on the verge of being eliminated. But in the final stages, they battled very well, they played very well. So in one sense, we don't just want to win each battle, but we also know which battle is the bigger battle and focus on the bigger battles. So this equanimity of speech and equanimity of emotion, equanimity means steadiness, that is indicating that a person is not getting caught with small battles. So sometimes if you are trying to serve Krishna, that is only the philosophy you are trying to give a class. And sometimes after a class some student may ask very difficult questions. And we may be able to answer some of them, we may not be able to answer some of them. we will become a little discouraged by that. So we may feel, oh, I didn't win this battle. But then, if in learning how to get the answers to those questions, we grow. Maybe we are a little overconfident before, we become a little more mature, a little more serious about preparing. Then maybe we didn't win that battle, but we will become better prepared for the war in future. Otherwise, say, one day we go and we're not able to answer some question, we feel so embarrassed. You know, people must have laughed at me, I made a fool of myself. I never give any class anymore. Yeah, if you couldn't answer the question, that's a bad thing. But it's not the end of the world. Okay, one class will go very well. Learn from it and more. So we don't want to let the small battles become too big a battle. So that way, this equanimity indicates that we know which battle is the big battle. So after this, we will now focus on the 258, where we talk about that if there is a war going on, we should be able to defend ourselves. In a war, there are two aspects. Don't let the enemy come in, and then we push back the enemy when the enemy is coming. But more importantly, we go into the enemy territory. Now, in the modern history, the country that has won the most wars and won the wars from the most unlikely of situations is Israel. Israel is just a tiny state, very, very small, surrounded by many Arab countries from various places. So in 1967, there were 5 countries which attacked Israel simultaneously. And in 6 days, Israel not only defeated all 5 countries, but actually took huge amount of land from them. And before that, Israel's size was 1/3. After that, their size became 3 times. So it is considered one of the most humiliating defeats for the Arab countries. It's like you attack, and instead of winning, you end up losing. You go into the enemy territory, and when we are going to the enemy territory, you expect that the enemy territory will be defensive, will be defending, and will defeat them. But Israel not only pushed them back, but actually seized a lot of land, strategic land from them. So, in any war, first, if the enemy is coming in, we stop them from coming in. And then we will push back so that the enemy is driven back. We gain the strategic territory. So first we focus on the defensive part. And then we talk about the attack. So how does this happen? So Krishna talks about this in 258 first of all. It's a well-known verse. I'll just explain the meaning and then we'll talk about it. Yada samharate chayam. Yada means when or as. Samharate is to take in, to draw in. Chayam, this. Certain what? Kurma angana sarvashaha. Kurma is tortoise. Angana inside its body. Sarvasha, all its limbs. So, tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell. The shell is very hard and protective. So there, even if an elephant comes and stands on the shell, unless the elephant is very small, actually the shell is very strong, it can protect. So kurmo anganani sarvesha. Similarly, indriyarthe is. So when the senses are out there, they are vulnerable to be attacked by the sense objects. The sense object might captivate us and we may get lost in it. So what we need to do is withdraw the senses. Tasya prajna pratisthita. So when we withdraw the senses from sense objects, that is a wise person. So let's recite this together 3 times. Yada samharate chayam kurmo angani sarvasha indriyani indriyadebhyas tasya prajna pratisthita. Yada samharate chayam kurmo angani sarvasha indriyani indriyadebhyas tasya prajna pratisthita. Yada samharate chayam kurmo angani essentially what happens for us is, while we are functioning, we can't live in the world with closed eyes. And we really are trying to close our eyes, we can't close our nose, we can't close our ears. We don't have that capacity only. So basically, we cannot have that we just shut off the sense objects. So what is the attack over here? We discussed the attack happens when something inside us makes us do something that we don't want to do. Like the battle, the inner war that is there is between our values versus our desires. So now, if our values are stronger, if our values are greater than our desires, then we win. That means, say, if I want to study Bhagavad Gita, I want to do my academic study. This is important for me, I want to learn and grow. That is a value, that's important for me. And at that time a desire comes up, this cricket match is going on, this new movie has come about, this TV series is going on. That desire comes up. Now if the value is strong, then you will say, I don't want to do this. But if the desire becomes strong, this one is eternal. I have less of eternity to read Bhagavad Gita. So everybody is supposed to I can do it anyway. Let me just watch this movie. So basically, to win this war, our values need to be stronger, our desire need to be weaker. Now, how do the desires rise? There are two aspects of the desire. Desires arise from outside and from inside. What do you mean? That desires arise from outside and inside? Basically, if you can consider, this is a senses, this is a sense, and this is a sense object. So sometimes this object comes to the sense. That means we are just going along our way, but the sense object comes in our path. Say we are going from our college to our hostel, and along the way we see if there is a movie theater, or there is a bar, or there is a drum joint, and some students think, okay, let me go over there. So they can go out searching for it. So sometimes the sense object comes to the senses, and then the desire gets fulfilled. So then here what happens is, behind the senses is the mind. If this goes anywhere further, then here desire starts growing. So this is the concept of outside-in approach. The other is the inside-out approach. The inside-out approach means that first the desire rises over here. And then because the desire arises, then we ourselves go to a sense object. So sometimes an alcoholic passes by a bar and says, I want to drink. Sometimes the alcoholic gets the desire, okay, where is the bar in the city? And then goes to the bar. So this is the inside out kind of desire. So now which is more common? Outside in or inside out? See, when among two options, which is the question asked? The safest answer is both. So we can say, actually speaking, our desires are themselves of two kinds. So one is more of a superficial desire, and the other is more of a deep-rooted desire. Superficial desire means, because I saw something, so I got the desire. Say, we just hungry, whatever food is there, I'm okay to take that. But then when we go and sit for prasad and we say, oh, there is some delicious food over here. So I would also like to have it. There is jalebi, there is this, there is that, I want to have it. That is more, it is not that we had the desire within, because the desire was there, because the object came up, so the desire got triggered inside. But the inside out desire is, say, okay, I will do the jalebi. Then, okay, we will do jalebi in the prasad, maybe I will go to the Govindas and then buy something from there. Or, I'll ask someone to cook it. We'll make some arrangement for it. So what happens is, there's an inside-out desire. So, now, when I'm using the example of desires, not all desires are equally bad. We'll talk about which desires are more serious and less serious, or where more seriously troublesome and less seriously troublesome also. So, it's not that because somebody eats a jalebi, they are going to become addicted to jalebi. And they say, from now onward, I will not eat anything except jalebi. Yati nasta. Nastieva, nastieva, nastieva. It's not that they will not eat anything else. Generally, there are some desires which become addictive. We all have this example of, if there is an itch, what happens? If we scratch it, if we scratch the itch, what happens? It worsens, it increases. But when does it happen? When the itch is due to a disease. Say right now I get the itch over here, to scratch over here. And just because I scratch right now, is it for the rest of my life I'm going to scratch? No, sometimes we scratch our head. It's not that I'm going to rip off the skin from my head by scratching. So we use the word scratch also metaphorically. I'm scratching my head. I don't understand what you're saying. So the idea is, it is not that any time we indulge in a desire, that is going to be compulsory. Now, of course, if you're giving a class and you start scratching your nose, that's not a pretty sight. It just looks very uncouth. It doesn't look very pleasant. But beyond that, it's not going to become compulsory. So it's not that every desire, if we indulge in it, it is going to become addictive. So it's basically when there is some disease already, when there is some deep dissatisfaction with the person, and then that desire becomes the way for the person to escape from the dissatisfaction, then that person becomes addicted. I'll talk about this a little more in our session tomorrow when we talk about how Krishna consciousness can help us to deal with desires. But at this point, let's focus on this principle that there are superficial desires and there are deep-rooted desires. Superficial desire means, oh, there's a jalebi, I would like to eat it. And tomorrow there's no jalebi, there's no desire for it. But a deep-rooted desire is, jalebi is my favorite food. Then I want it. So if you see, there are two different approaches. There is much traditional wisdom also, and like you have proverbs in the Vedic tradition also. There is a Brahman called Aitiya. Aitiya is the historical record. So we have two distinct sayings: out of sight. Out of sight is out of mind. But then there is the opposite saying: separation makes the heart grow fonder. When you don't have something, when something goes away from you, what happens? You want it more and more. So now which is true? Is it out of sight is out of mind, or is it separation makes the heart grow fonder? You got the trick, huh? Well, actually, if it is superficial desires, then out of sight is out of mind. So somebody just wants to have fun, and in the party there are drinks, they'll drink also. And if there are no drinks, then they will just find something else to have. They'll try to find some other person whom they can have some fun. And they'll have fun there. They're interested in fun, and drinks is just one way to have fun. Okay. But if that is not there, okay, forget it. Let's see what else we can do. But if somebody is already hooked to alcohol, if the party there is no drinks, they will say, okay, after the party gets over, where is the bar nearby? We'll go there and we'll have a drink. So, for deep-rooted desires, what happens? Separation makes the heart grow fonder. So, desires are, in one sense, not monolithic. Monolithic means they are not all of one kind. There are different kinds of desires. So, initially, right now, when we are talking about defense, we are primarily talking about the superficial desires. So, it's like those are the desires which come from outside in. Remember, another way to understand this outside in and inside out is that
it's primarily the enemy attacking from outside. The inside out is the spies from inside, they are sabotaging. The spies from inside, they just destroy our defenses. So the superficial desires are like, these are like the aggressors. The aggressors or invaders. Whereas the deep-rooted desires, they are like the spies or the traitors. They are inside us and from inside they destroy. So now if the aggressors are coming from outside, we can just use the machine gun and shoot all of them. But if there's a spy in our own party, we can't just use the machine gun and destroy. Because in killing one spy, we may kill 100 of our own soldiers. So a categorically different strategy will be required for dealing with the aggressors and for dealing with the spies. So for dealing with the aggressors, what do we do? See, every country needs to have some borders. This is the border, this is where you can stay, this is where I'll stay. Now, you could say a country can have maximum security by having control everywhere else. The country has no borders because it controls everything. It controls A, it rules everywhere. Now that's practically not possible. Maybe for some country it is possible, but generally throughout human history, it has been very rare that one king or one place, one entity ruled everything. So now America may have some control beyond its borders also. It may have military bases in this part of the world, that part of the world. But its level of control in those military bases is not as much as it is in America itself. So America has some military bases in the Middle East. And from there, they try to protect their interests. But if somebody is attacked over there, okay, that's serious. But if somebody comes to America and attacks, like when the Twin Towers were attacked, that is an attack in their territory itself. America took it very seriously. So the idea is that every country needs to have borders. And then the borders, they give, what do? They give a reference point for fighting. What am I going to fight over? What is the point of fighting? Okay, the point of fighting is you are not allowed to come beyond this point. So just as a country has borders, a consciousness, our consciousness is also like a territory, a consciousness needs to have boundaries. So to the extent we have boundaries, yesterday I already talked about the concept of boundaries. Remember I talked about anger and different people, everybody gets angry, but we all have certain amount of boundaries to our anger. No matter how angry I get, this is what I'm going to do. Even criminals may have some boundaries. For example, in prison, I devoted to doing prison outreach in many parts of the world. Go to jail and can say that even one prisoner, say if somebody comes into a prison for being a child sexual abuser, prisoners don't like such a person. Now, inside the prison, the prisoners will actually attack and kill somebody with child sex abuser. Okay, sex is there in everyone, sexual urge is there in everyone. And maybe there are people who may also be rapists. But even they have some sense of decency. You don't attack children. Small children, 5-year-old, 10, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, you don't sexually violate a small child. So child sex abusers are something which even hardcore criminals look down on. So the point here is that everybody has some boundaries. And the idea of a boundary is what? Inside the boundary, the behavior inside the boundary is acceptable. So the behavior is acceptable, the behavior outside is unacceptable. So right now I am giving a class. every one of you is perfectly confident that the person sitting next to you is not going to suddenly turn on you and punch you on your nose. Now, is that possible? Well, you can say anything is possible. But is it probable? Is it likely? Very unlikely. You understand that if somebody has come for a spiritual camp like this, then they already have a certain level of spiritual interest, which also means they have a certain level of self-discipline. You would expect that even in the classroom, in academic classroom, in college. Somebody has come to a college, somebody has taken admission, somebody has got the qualification to take admission over here. But this kind of behavior is not accepted. Now sometimes in a classroom, if somebody may throw some chit from one person to another, somebody beats somebody with a pencil, there are some small, these are not the best behavior. So it could be mischievous behavior, it could be annoying behavior. Some of it is not desirable, but is acceptable. But something is unacceptable. If it's unacceptable, then if the professor notices it, the professor will say, okay, get out of the class. Or so they will get out of the school only, rusticated from here. So there is a boundary which enables us to differentiate between what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. So for us, in the inner war, if we know what is it that we are fighting, and if we actually want to fight effectively, we need to define the boundaries. And then, when some temptation comes from outside, or even when some urge comes from inside, we can okay, I may indulge to this point, but not beyond this point. So let's take an example to illustrate this idea of boundaries. So, in the early days of our movement, when the devotees were very young and new, so what happened? Prabhupada started his Love Feast, Sunday Love Feast, he called it, 1966 he started it, after ISKCON began. And then one day the devotees worked very hard, they cooked a Sunday Feast. And then as the Sunday Feast was finished cooking, then they said, let's taste it. And they took a little bit of the gulab jamun, they took some puris. And by the time the Sunday Feast started, the devotees had themselves finished all the Sunday Feast. And the guests came, there was nothing left. There's only some rice and some dal was left over there. And Prabhupada said, what happened? And the devotees just, Prabhupada said, you didn't eat everything. So Prabhupada said, first time it happened, Prabhupada said, yeah, this sadhu is very attractive. So Prabhupada didn't take it very seriously. Then Prabhupada called the manager and said, you should know the devotees, there's one in charge, that if they want to eat more, they can eat like the Sunday Feast it's for the devotees also, but it's also for the guests. So you cannot just, we all would like to eat delicious food, it's a natural desire. But if it is made for a particular purpose, then that purpose has to be fulfilled. So that kind of behavior is not very acceptable. So now, if we want to fight the inner war, this particular metaphor, like draw the senses inward, away from the sense organs, like a tortoise draws the limbs into its body. So the tortoise shell becomes like a boundary. If the limbs are inside, the enemy will not going to attack. If the limbs are outside, the enemy will attack. So how do we go about establishing the boundaries to defend ourselves? That's what we'll talk about in the next 10-15 minutes, and then we'll have question answers. So I'll use an acronym, CAST. C-A-S-T. It's not the caste system C-A-S-T. Caste means to take cast in iron. To cast means to set up, to build. So there are 4 ways we can set up boundaries. The first is category. Category means like this category of activity I'm just not going to do. So for example, when we take initiation, there are 2 parts of the vows we take. One is about chanting, the other is about the so that's the entire that category of activities we are not going to do. Like for example, no meat eating. So the vow is no meat eating, it is not no eating. with no eating, we all die. That's not possible. But one category of food, they are not going to take. So, sometimes the advantage, so basically a boundary gives us a reference point where I want to find. So, we all may have the urge to eat food. And we may eat different kinds of foods. But that's the boundary. That no matter how much craving for food is going to come, I am not going to eat. So it's a category. So tomorrow is Ekadashi. So tomorrow what is the category we are going to follow? No grains. That's a category. Now that's an example of one more thing. But now with each of these, there is a positive and a negative. With the boundary of category is that it's very simple. This whole thing I am not going to do. Say for example in medicine, no intoxication. Now that means I am not going to take alcohol. Okay? That's a category which you say no to. But then, okay, sometimes it may become very fuzzy. That, okay, if there is tea, you will take tea. What is that herbal tea? You will take that? Okay, we can take it. But can herbal tea be intoxicating? Well, maybe. It depends. Generally it will not be intoxicating. But are all the intoxicants limited only to a particular list of substances? If no intoxicating substance is the principle, then according to many psychologists nowadays, sugar is the biggest intoxicant. So are you going to say no sugar? Well, no, that's very much part of our tradition. We have to regulate sugar. So what happens is sometimes it may not be practical. So the category may be simple. That okay, I will not look at any obscene images. That's a category. But then what happens is people just going along our business on the road and there are so many images that they come in advertisements which may be categorized as obscene. Now we don't want to look at them, but we can't close our eyes and walk along the road. So sometimes it may not be possible to say no to an entire category. But whenever it's possible, this is very simple. An entire category, I am going to say no. So for us, any food like meat is one food set of foods. Now if we decide we take the vow no eating meat, but then actually what we will also say, we know food is not offered to Krishna. We actually end up following a higher standard. So what that means is, we may see a lot of food which we see here or there, but we say, okay, I'm not going to eat this. So unoffered food we will do. That's a category. Now, is a category always possible to follow? Well, generally it is. We should arrange our life in such a way that we can follow that. But the category is that it uses a black and white boundary very clearly. But in everything a black and white boundary may not be possible to have. So the second is accountability. Now accountability means that accountability can be to some others or it can be to self. So for example, if somebody is struggling with diabetes and they are trying to give up sugar, but they find it very difficult. Then they may have some diet consultant, some doctor or some friend. The doctor friend may tell that every week you keep a track of what all you eat and you submit the report of that. Now what happens is, if somebody, okay, I started eating one gulab jamun and I ate 20 gulab jamuns. Now if I did that, I was just writing that I ate 20 gulab jamuns. And then if you have to tell someone else that I ate 20 gulab jamuns, so it's a bit embarrassing. So what happens is just the fact that I have to tell someone else, and that creates a deterrent. So if you have someone else who is going to tell what we did. So alcoholic is a very important thing. You need an accountability partner. So whenever somebody has a relapse or somebody has the urge to relapse, at the time they try to call their partner and talk with them. So we need some kind of accountability. Nowadays with internet so easily available, it's some people say, some social critics are saying that our technology has become too strong for our morality. That now in 15 minutes we can see more obscene imagery then what even the wealthiest person in the world could see in 50 years. Because in the past you had to get physical books. How many physical books can you get? And how many can you keep? Like a person can have a whole library filled with obscenities. And more than that, it's so easily accessible. So it's very difficult. If somebody is succumbing, then it's difficult. In one sense, it's understandable. That doesn't make it acceptable. That doesn't make it certainly desirable. But still, it's a difficult situation. So then, having some software installed on our device and maybe somebody else checks what kind of sites we have visited, that is some kind of accountability. That can be helpful. Now, if we have accountability with others, the positive is that it becomes like a strong deterrent. Deterrence means it's something which prevents us from doing something wrong. So strong deterrent. But the negative is, it is difficult to find. It is difficult to find the right person for this. You don't want someone who is too heavy and you don't want somebody who is too soft. If somebody is too heavy, one mistake and that person just piles on us so heavily, we start feeling that ये मेरे बस की बात नहीं है. You can completely discouraged. And if the person is too light, then what happens is you just keep continuing the same thing. So it's not so easy to find. And the other is we can do it with ourselves. The positive is that, so how do we do it for ourselves? Maybe we keep some time for introspection. We do journaling on a daily basis, and by that we write down. Now, some people think of journaling as writing down all the events that we did in the day. And that takes time, that's time consuming, and that's not very productive. But what we could do is journal. Say the particular 5 minutes. If I can do short time, then I will record all the things. Did I speak for 1 minute and then I stop? I went for 10 minutes. When I stop, why did I stop? Is it because I myself felt wrong when I stopped? Or is it the third person came and I didn't want the third person to see how I am dealing with this person? So try to record it ourselves. What happens? It's like yesterday I said sometimes you do not even realize that we are losing territory. Because you don't even realize we are in the war. Like say, if there is no well-defined boundary, or if you don't check the boundary, then you may find, hey, we thought this was in our territory. But the opponent enemy has come and taken 10 miles of land over there. So accountability is required. So if some young people, they are born with money, they have a lot of money, maybe from their parents, the parent has given their credit card, you can do what you want with it. Now if somebody is like that, you ask them where do you spend their money? But you don't know where they spend their money. And if they don't know where they have spent the money, then there is no way to find out why you spend that money over there. Isn't it? So basically, if first there has to be accounting, and then there can be accountability. Accounting means, okay, you spend this money here, spend this money here, spend this money here. Then why did you spend so much money on this? Could you have bought this for a cheaper account? Cheaper way? So when there is accounting, then there will be accountability. So a journal helps us to do some accounting. So it's like what we could say is, we could do accounting of our time, how much time did I spend over here? All of us may feel, I don't have time. And it's true, all of us have less time and we have lots of things to do. But then where is my time going? Let me try to evaluate that. So accounting. So now the positive of this is that it's relatively easy. Easy to do. We don't need any other person. We can just decide every day, I'm going to spend 5 minutes and I'm going to write down. Okay, which were the incidents when I got angry, which were the incidents when I overate. Or if we are oversleeping. Or spending too much time on social media. So then we can decide, okay, how much time did I spend? How much time was it necessary? When did it become unnecessary? When was it not unnecessary, but it was completely undesirable? Undesirable. See, in social media also, okay, I read this news, and then read that news, and I read that news, that might just be a waste of time. From there, you might go to areas where it's not just distracting, but it's also polluting. So we can keep accounting of that. But the negative of that is it's also easy to avoid. Like that, one of my friends, he was struggling with, he had a heart attack. After that, he had to regulate his eating. The doctor told him that you have to keep track of how much calories you eat. So he said that whenever I would eat too much, I would just not enter my journal, and I would say I forgot to do that. So what happened? That's why the journal never knows anything negative. So that's the problem with accountability to oneself. We can just dodge it very easily. Now the third way we can have boundary is through space. What does space means? We create some distance. Say for example, if an alcoholic is trying to recover from alcoholism and their home is right next to a bar, then what is going to happen? There is no bar for them to go to the bar. See, everyone has moments of weakness. And in the moments of weakness, then when the urge comes up, if the opportunity is very easily available, the person will immediately indulge. So if a person is really serious about recovering from alcoholism, they may have to relocate. And I can't say right next to a bar. Nowadays even is only regulations. And there is everyone bars over here. Everyone bars over here. So they will decide on that. So the idea is this is control the outer space, but we can try to control to some extent. So if we are studying the Bhagavad Gita, and our tendency is we just pick up the phone and look at one message and look at 10 messages and make use all the time. And we decide that when I'm the phone in another room. So our mind is lazy. The earth the messages. But then if we have to, if the phone is right next to us, just pick up and start looking at messages. But you have to walk to the next room and then look at the messages. It's way too much. I'll do it afterwards. There's one devoted friend of mine, what he does is because nowadays many of us read Shastra also on devices. So he says, whenever it is in Shastra reading time, he reboots his phone in the safe mode. And the safe mode, none of the social media apps turn on. So there only the Veda base turns on and he reads from the Veda Shastra. And suddenly at 1 hour, now if in between you get the urge, okay, I'll go into my WhatsApp message, I'll look at Facebook messages. Then what he has to do is turn off the phone, again turn it on in the safe, from the safe mode to the normal mode, and then you turn on the app. So then you know, okay, forget it, and do it afterwards. So this is related with time. So space and time. So time could mean that. So space basically means what? To put it diagrammatically. So this is the sense and this is the sense object. So here there is very little space. But if we arrange in such a way that the sense object is far away, there is some substantial space over here. So how we can create that space, that is for us to decide based on our particular situation. We can try to create that space so that, say for example, if in our food center we have a library, and most libraries you don't eat food. Some libraries might be allowed, usually libraries are not a place for it. Because food can be distracting. If you want to eat, sometimes you just want some snacks. Or you say, I got a snack attack. That sometimes you're actually hungry, sometimes you're just bored with studying and you want something to do, something to munch on. Then if we keep the place where you're studying there only the problem, we keep some food. Then you just pick up the food, start eating, and you don't even realize how much you're eating. But if you keep the food in some other place, you have to go to that place and get that food. So it takes some time, it takes some effort. That space protects us. So now, what does time mean? Time means we may decide that, okay, every morning I'm not going to turn on my social media till 9 o'clock. So till this particular point, no social media. Now if we decide that no, but I have some managerial responsibilities and I have to see if somebody wants to contact me, then we may decide, okay, only this particular app I will go on. And then I will look at it at this time, and no more. So we try to create some boundaries in terms of time. So now the space and time, both of them are very similar. The positive of space and time is that it is, for most cases, it is doable. It may not be doable all the time, but it is doable. So the negative of this is also that it is invisible. I may decide to do it and I may just do it at any time. But if we can erect the boundary, then we can protect. If we can establish the boundary, then that helps us to fight. That helps us to defend ourselves. Now of course boundaries alone are not enough. Later on Krishna said, Dhayato Vichayan Purusava. What is the example over there? Small contemplation that can eventually lead to pranashati, self-destruct. So it's like you have built a boundary wall, but you let the enemy make a small hole in the boundary wall. And if they make a small hole, then what will they? Once they make a small hole, they will break. Maybe just a small hole is enough and they put some dynamite in that small hole. And then if the dynamite is outside, that can also blow the wall. But if the dynamite is inside the wall, then the whole wall gets blown. So the idea is, Krishna says that it's not just enough. So with respect to boundaries, first they have to be built. And then after that, the boundaries have to be protected. We have to make sure that others don't destroy the boundaries. So 2.58 is talking about establishing the boundaries through the example of a metaphor. But then what in 262, 63, Krishna is saying that this is small contemplation. That contemplation is like what? A hole in the boundary. And from that hole in the boundary, sometimes a thing may happen. That hole we can see it. But sometimes, from that small contemplation, we may go towards self-destruction. So how this happens and how this can be prevented? Through the more positive strategy. You don't want to just defend, you also want to counter-attack. So if there is dynamite in that hole, then the whole boundary wall is destroyed. So like that, we have to be careful that we establish the boundary will protect us provided we protect the boundary. Isn't it? It's a two-way thing. And the wall can protect us, but we have to make sure that we ensure the wall is not being destroyed. So like the boundary, it protects us, and then we also protect the boundary. It's both ways, and by that we can be safe. So in Bhakti there are rules and regulations. The rules that we follow are like the boundaries, and these boundaries help us to win, or at least to not be defeated in the war against temptation. So I summarize what we discussed today. Mainly discuss 3 points in the war against temptation. The inner war. First point I discussed was about how in the war we need to keep the biggest battle the biggest battle. We need to fight the biggest battle and not the smaller battles. So material gain and material loss, these are like the smaller battles, like 5 rupee gain or 5 rupee loss. Whereas spiritual growth is like the 5 crore gain. We want to keep fighting the bigger battle, and that's why we need equanimity. Don't get caught in the small battle, because otherwise we will be caught and diverted by the decoys. So these are small things. And then we discussed about if you want to fight the inner war, then we need boundaries. And with respect to the boundaries, what they do is they give like for the consciousness needs boundaries, just like a country needs borders. What they do is they give a clear-cut reference point for fighting. Otherwise, what is it that you are going to fight over? So boundaries they define, they separate acceptable behavior from unacceptable behavior. So we discussed boundaries of 4 kinds. C was what? Category. Like this whole thing I'm not going to do, this kind of activity I'm not doing. A was accountability. Accountability can be of 2 kinds. One was to others, the other was to ourselves. S was space and T was time. So this was the major part of the class. The third one I discussed was that we need to, just 2.6263 is an example of a bone in a boundary, in a border. So that's like, it's like a small breach, a small contemplation on a sense object. Yes, that can lead to destruction. Similarly, this can also lead to destruction. So we need to, the boundaries will protect us, but we need to protect the boundaries. So like what is that saying? Dharma or Rakshati Dharma. That those who protect Dharma are protected by Dharma. So like that protect boundaries, the boundaries protect. This way we all can at least defend ourselves in the inner war. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments? Yes, please. Do we have a mic here? It's not that it's necessary that it is the male-female union. Many times if there is no act, then there is no the man gets excited, the sperm comes out. So in the semen there is no sperm if the person is not attracted. So attraction, then there can be no reproduction. It's not that it always happens like that. But that's one of the purely sociological reasons why even non-religious people are still against, are talking about not using porn. The article in the Times, long article. What is it? The more people are exposed to porn, and in pornography, all kinds of weird and exaggerated sexual images come up in people's minds. That's what I was showing. So what happens is that people get excited or agitated only when they see these exaggerated images. And even when they are in someone, they don't just feel excited. And there's all this virtual is actually preventing people from having physical sex. And then people just can't reproduce. So from purely sexual perspective also, the idea is that a person can't reproduce if the person is not moving. So lust itself has its role. We say as long as the body is there, lust is going to be there, because that's the way it happens. And also the dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamos pradashu. I use the word kama itself over there. So in the Gita, kama has both a negation and motivation. The negative is what we discussed in 336 to 43. When Krishna says kama isha pradashu is like a big enemy. But believe that it's 7, 10 or 11 where Krishna talks about that when karma is according to dharma, the Krishna says that is I am that karma. What does that mean? That means actually birth or the creation of a new life form is a miracle. And how it happens? It's actually biologically it's a miracle. When a couple wants to have a child and not able to have a child, they go to doctor. Nowadays, a lot of the fertility clinics are there, treatments are there. So it's a very mystery. And then biologically, the male and the female, actually they are not able to conceive. So there is some element of mystery in it. When Krishna says, "Prajanti Asmi Kadar," and Krishna says, "I am the Kandar which leads to progeny." So just the male without responsibility, that's not good. But there is a positive dimension. So when we say as long as because the idea is functions, we are also logical being at a particular level. And one biology is production, survival and production. So he says, "No kama kami." Apurvanam achala pratishtham samudram apah pravishanti tadvat kama yam pravishanti sarve sarvishamaapnoti na kama kami. It's a very curious phrase. Na kama kami means don't be a desirer of desire. What that do not be. What does it mean? So basically, if we consider to our consciousness, karma can refer to the temptation or the proposition. The proposition can come in from outside. And karma can refer to the intention. Or the act, once I make the intention, then I do the action. So Krishna is, if you see this purport as a 2.70 purport, Prabhupada says, although the desire may come, but the inclination to fulfill the desire is not there. What it means is that say for example, Ekadashi, if we see some delicious food, we have the desire to eat it, but no, I'm not going to eat it, not today. So the desire may come, but the inclination is not there. So that is where our determination comes in. And Krishna says that, so as far as the desire comes, there is a difference between perception and contemplation. They are not the same thing. Perception and contemplation. Krishna doesn't say drishyato vishayan pumsa. He says dhyayato vishayan pumsa. It is, what does contemplation means? Contemplation actually involves some imagination. It is not just the perception of the sense object that triggers desire within us. It's the imagination that is associated with it. When there is imagination, that's when the desire starts growing. If there is no imagination, then there are no desires. Say, if you are traveling by train and while they're sleeping, and someone, it's an overnight train, but you don't have a bed, they sleep, they don't have a sleeping monk, so they're sitting and sleeping. And there's a person sleeping next to her also. And maybe that person gets up and goes away, somebody else and comes sits over there. And you'll be sleeping, and then maybe the person sitting next to us is a female. And our body may be touching that female. But we may not even be aware. Body is just the body. It's not that there's a significant difference. So if there is, I'm just giving an example of it, if there's no imagination, then even if the physical touch is there, there is no agitation by that. So because what is happening is the perception in the sense that okay, my body is touching somebody else's body is there. But the contemplation involves imagination. Imagination is what triggers the desire. So if somebody is a doctor, and the doctor has to treat a patient, and the patient is a female, they may touch the patient, but then the doctor has to be trained sufficiently so that they are not focusing on imagining over there, and focusing on investigating the physical health of the patient. So if the doctor can't do that, then the doctor cannot be a professional. It's not always easy. But the point is that it is not just the perception that leads to perception alone that leads to the agitation. It's the imagination associated with perception. And we have the capacity to regulate the imagination. It can come from a sense of responsibility. The doctor, if the patient is a female, but the patient is in serious condition, the patient is an attractive young woman. But the doctor, this is critical care, I have to take care of this patient. A sense of responsibility can be there. So a sense of morality can also be there in that. Generally speaking, say if somebody has a sister will be attractive. But a sense of morality is there. We won't imagine over there. So the perception and the imagination are two separate things. Drushyato and dhyato. So drushyato cannot be avoided, but dhyato is a matter of choice. And in that, when we avoid the contemplation, essentially means what? It is our emotions are getting triggered. And the emotions are triggered by an act of imagination. Imagination. Say, okay, I'll make this example a little provocative. But let's take a little less provocative example. Suppose there is a Bharatanatyam dance going on where Krishna is being depicted. And maybe it's a young woman who is depicting that. Now, if somebody is just a lusty person, then that all that person is going to say is a female body will get attracted and agitated. But somebody else who is an expert in Bharatanatyam, that the person is a female is there. It's not that you are blind to that. But the focus is on how expertly the person is dancing. And if somebody is also showing, okay, which Leela are they depicting? How well are they depicting that Leela? So what is happening is, there the attention, the emotion, the imagination is not going in a sexual direction, but it is going more in an analytical or emotional direction. So perception is there, but after that the imagination, where it goes, that at least we have some choice. Na kama kami. Okay? So we will continue tomorrow. And tomorrow we will be discussing about the concept of, while Param Drishtani is mentioned in this section, we will elaborate it in the next section. So how Bhakti itself can help us to not only defend ourselves, but actually counterattack and to win the war. And what winning the war actually means. Does it mean that we are forever free from desires, or how does it, what does winning the war mean? All that we will discuss in tomorrow's final session. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Srila Prabhupada ki Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Gaur Pranayana ki